Dear students, welcome to the session on answer writing. In this session, I'm going to help you in understanding how to write the best answer for history and culture questions. Every subject has a different technique of writing answers. The technique that is required for history and culture is quite different from the technique that you need to have for geography, environment, economy, or science related questions. So in this session, I'm going to take you through the best practices which have been developed by my team and myself here to help you in getting very good marks on questions related to history and culture. So I have a list of questions here for discussion in this session. We'll go through all these questions one by one. And whatever the doubts you have, you can ask me in chat support. I'll take up all your doubts before we move ahead. If you look at the syllabus of GS History and Culture, you have modern India, and modern India is from the mid of 18th century till present. Till present means you have to see the developments till today. इसको आगे बढ़ाने वाला चला गया आपका. पहले इसको बंद करना पड़ेगा. No, पहले इसको बंद करना पड़ेगा. हाँ, then it works. ठीक है, देख लो हो जाएगा. So, what kind of issues are there? What are the common mistakes which students commit while dealing with the questions of history and culture? Let us see some important issues. See, questions of history and culture maybe from modern India. That's a very important segment for your prelims as well as for your main exam. Today's focus is on main exam. So modern India is going to be very, very important. Then you have questions related to world history. World history syllabus doesn't say much about the topics which UPSC can ask in exam, but you have to interpret the topics. Then you have art and culture. So these are three main segments of GS history and culture in main examination. And all these three segments you have to master. You do not know how many questions are likely to come from which segment, because every time the percentage or the significance of these segments can vary. You have to prepare each and every prominent topic from all of these segments so that you do not have to face any problem in examination. When you look at the questions of modern India, questions of modern India starts from the mid of 18th century. Mid of 18th century means process of establishment of British rule started in India around that time. Think of Battle of Plassey, 1757, Battle of Buxar, 1764. Think of Carnatic Wars between French and the English company. All those things are the beginning part of modern India. Then you have to move ahead. You have topics like economic development. So economic issues like land revenue system, drain of wealth, destruction of Indian handicraft industry, maybe related to railways, maybe European finance capital. All those topics I hope you have prepared. And you have not, if you have not prepared, you have difficulty in understanding, you can just write a mail or write a message. I'll help you in identifying those topics. In world history, the syllabus says that events from the mid of 18th century. So mid of 18th century means something around 1750s and 60s. It doesn't talk about Enlightenment. It doesn't talk about American Revolution. It doesn't talk about French Revolution. But all these topics are inherent because starting from the mid of 18th century, all these things you have to face. Questions have come from American Revolution. Questions have come from French Revolution, also in GS paper 1. In art culture, dimensions are many. You may have questions from monuments, say temples, caves. You have stupas, palaces, forts, etc. You may have questions from music, dance. You may have questions from paintings. You may have questions from martial art, puppetry, all those kind of things. Questions also have been asked in art culture from coinage. A question was asked a few years back about Gupta coinage. So you have to keep all these things in mind. Whenever you start thinking of writing, any answer to questions of history and culture, every time follow the point-based method. So do not write in paragraphs, write in points. When you write in points, you can put forward your specific in-depth understanding of those issues which UPSC is asking. If you try to write in paragraphs, then things or the points or whatever the issues you are trying to analyze may get lost in details. You may have to cover multiple dimensions. Sometimes you have 5 dimensions, sometimes you have 7 dimensions, and at times you may have even more than 10 dimensions. If you put in point form, you can reduce explanation, you can add more dimensions. Questions have to have different dimensions. Your answer has to be as per the demand of question, because if you do not cover all the dimensions, the examiner has a set of model answer in point form. I have seen the kind of model answers which UPSC gives to its examiners, because some of my senior teachers and some friends, they every time go to UPSC to check copies of GS as well as history optional, so we always remain in touch. They have a set of points. Suppose the model answer of examiner has 7 points, you have written only 5 points, so you can expect accordingly you will get maybe 50-60% marks. In that situation of pressure in examination hall, students cannot cover all the dimensions which they have in their mind. Writing answer in examination hall is a different ball game. Writing answer at home is quite easy, because pressure takes away your focus, and you have to maintain calmness, you have to maintain focus when you are in examination hall. So follow point form. In point form, you have 2 main ways. You can put number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, these kind of points. Or the better version is you may have bullets in your answer. If you put bullets, this is aesthetically more appealing, and plus the examiner cannot really count how many points you are covering, because marks also depend on relative or comparative performance. Think of a situation, an examiner has just checked a copy of history or GS paper 1. The student prior to you whose copy was checked by examiner had say 7 points, and your copy has say 9 points, so you are likely to get more marks, because relatively examiner is going to feel that your answer is better. This is how human brain works. Nobody is going to really count, but once it is written 7 and 9, so automatically the impression comes your answer is more rich, your answer has more details, your answer has more dimensions, as if you have better understanding of that topic. But at the same time, if sometimes you're writing only 5 points and your previous copy was having 7 points, you are likely to face less mark situation. To avoid such kind of situations, I always suggest students to put bullets, not numbers. Numbers at times become confusing, because sometimes the number could also be mixed up with other subparts. So follow bullet. Bullets are aesthetically appealing. Bullets are good to see, and plus you don't have to worry about how many bullets you're putting. So follow point form. This is the first thing which you have to see. And then second point you have to keep in mind is that use charts, use map, flow chart or table, or any kind of pictographical representation. If you use map, if you use flow chart, if you use table or graph, etc., your answer becomes more appealing. Your answer should be better. Your answer should also be different, because many times you might have heard from the toppers, those who get selected with very high rank and those who get very good marks in different papers, everybody will say you have to be different, you have to be better. आपका आंसर बेटर भी होना चाहिए और आपका आंसर डिफरेंट भी होना चाहिए. Only different will not do the trick. It has to have good content, and when you have good content, it must be better looking also. You can save time because at times you cannot have sufficient minutes with you to write last few questions. You can save time by using flowcharts, by using diagrams, or by using maps. So use that. There are three main benefits of using maps, flowcharts, and tables, etc. Let me tell you one by one. The first benefit is the appearance. The appearance becomes better. Your answer looks better than somebody else, a student, those who has not included all these kind of things. Second thing, you can save time because you can display so many points, so many pieces of information in very less time, in just few minutes or just few seconds. You can make a decent map, you can make a decent flow chart, and you can save time. Third thing, the pages. You have to fill pages also. Think of 15 marker. In 15 marker questions, you have 3 sides to write. You have to use at least 2.5 sides to give the impression that you are not deficient in content. Sometimes students just write everything, whatever they know, in one side, and 2 sides are blank. That's not a good impression. That impression will be negative, and an examiner is not going to give you very good marks if you leave entire page blank. So if you make a kind of map of India, a decent map, you can maybe cover half of the page or maybe a quarter of page, and you can extend your answer to see that 2.5 pages at least are covered. So these are the benefits: time saving, the presentation, plus you can also fill the pages properly to give the impression that your answer is having sufficient content. The third thing, what you need to see is the language. Very few students pay attention to what kind of language is important for exam. You might have heard about the executive way of speaking. You have to speak directly. UPSC in its instructions clearly says that more than the content, the quality is important. Quality of your answer has to be good. It's not just you have to fill the pages. And the language here has to be executive language. Executives, whenever you will be a civil servant, you like to speak directly. Your message has to be absolutely clear. There must be no possibility of misinterpretation. So you have to speak directly. You have to speak in clear-cut language without any kind of misinterpretation. So executive language, always write in third person. Avoid I, you, we, the first and second person languages. Write in third person. If you write in third person, then it's going to be showing your maturity. Then use passive voice instead of active voice. Use passive voice. So think of a kind of framing of sentence. Somebody says, okay, a statement says Harappan civilization was urban in character. If question asks about the features of Harappan civilization, you can write Harappan civilization was urban in character. Other way of writing could be urbanization was an essential feature of Harappan civilization. The most important word, the most important sentence, the most important part of your answer must be in the beginning. If examiner reads only one word or just few words, the person should get to know what you're trying to convey. You should not be hitting around the bush. And avoid any kind of indirect reference. You should not be too critical. You should be balanced, because this is a test of your personality. Whether you are appearing prelims exam or you're appearing in main exam, every stage of examination in civil services here is going to test your personality. Your knowledge of geography, your knowledge of history may not be much relevant in your career, but your personality is going to shape your entire decision-making process. So you have to ensure that you do not write anything wrong, you do not be too critical, you do not exhibit any kind of radical philosophy or radical ideology. You know that your answer sheet has margins on both sides. And if you have noticed, on the right side, this margin clearly says do not write anything here. What's the point? What do you think? What is the reason for giving this instruction? This instruction is given here. You are not supposed to use the right margin, because if examiner finds any kind of radical influence, any kind of radical ideology, any kind of personality flaw, he or she is going to make notes here. And those notes, this cutting goes to the interview chairman when, if you are called for interview, they will confirm, they will try to confirm whether these kind of radical flaw, ideological elements are really part of your thinking. So ensure that you follow instructions. If UPSC says do not write anything here, do not write anything here. You should not say, okay, I'm writing civilization and half of the word goes this side. Instructions have to be followed, and every instruction is not supposed to be questioned. In fact, in bureaucracy, you have to follow the instructions in letter and in spirit. You are not supposed to question the instructions. Whatever order comes, you have to apply it if the order is legitimate, if the order is ethically, morally appropriate. So follow instructions. Do not exhibit any kind of radical influences. Do not use any kind of wrong language or abusive language. Do not exhibit your kind of religious leanings or weaknesses or fears. Your language is going to be very important. Content is going to be polished by your language. The next issue which I can highlight here for you is the word limit. All of you have to follow word limit. In history and culture, you have two kind of questions. Generally, you have 10 markers and you have 15 markers. 10 markers require 150 words and 15 markers require 250 words. So try to understand how many sentences, how many pages are sufficient for 150 words. Ensure that you do not cross the limit by a significant margin. Few words plus minus would be all right, but if you start writing, let's say 200 words, that will be problematic. First thing, you are breaching the limit and you may be negatively penalized. There are marks deduction if you breach the limit, because limits are given for a specific reason. And plus, if you write too much, you're going to face a scarcity of time. Hardly any student finds sufficient time to attempt all the 20 questions in GS papers. So paper 1 has 20 questions generally. So 20 questions are very, very difficult to be attempted within the specific or specified time limit. Instead of writing 150, try to manage in 145 instead of going to 165. So save time. If you save time, you can pay attention to the quality of your answers. Word limit will decide your speed, or your speed is going to be affected by your word limits. Think how many words per minute a good candidate writes in examination. How many words per minute you must write to complete the paper within 3 hours. A normal student writes around 25 to 30 words per minute. And a good student writes even 40 words per minute. So whenever you practice at home, kindly pay attention to what's your speed. Because speed is also going to be very important. You have to win this war. This is a competition. It's not about actual marks, it's about the marks in relation to or in comparison with other students. अगर आपके मार्क्स बाकी और कैंडिडेट से ज़्यादा है तो आपका सिलेक्शन होगा, और यदि किसी और कैंडिडेट के मार्क्स आपसे ज़्यादा है तो डेफिनेटली he or she will go through to the interview stage and will get the name in final merit list. So all these things you have to keep in mind. There are many more issues which you have to keep in mind, because whenever I teach my students the techniques to write best answer, there are 120 different dimensions. And those 120 different dimensions I'll be discussing with you in different test papers during the classes and during your one-to-one interactions, because it's practically impossible to tell all the 120 dimensions of a good answer in just one session. We have to discuss the answers to the questions also here. This is the question number 1 of today's session. Try to read the question, identify the demands. Let's see how to approach it. First, read the question carefully, discuss, elaborate, critically analyze, examine, analyze, or justify, substantiate. These kind of suffix or prefixes, you have to pay attention, because the language of your answer will depend on such prefix or suffix. If it is discussion, then you have to look at different dimensions and see which dimension was more important, which dimension was less important, which dimension came first, which dimension came later. It's a discussion, as if you and me are talking about any particular issue. If elaboration discussion is not there, elaboration means you have to provide more details or explain any specific dimension is being highlighted by the question, and you have to add more details to that. So kindly learn about the prefixes and suffixes. There are around 45 different kind of prefixes and suffixes used by UPSC in different questions. You have to know the meaning, you have to know the demand of all these prefixes and suffixes to fulfill the demand or the needs of question. Whenever you read question, identify keywords. Discuss is one of these keywords. Socio-religious features. So question here is talking about socio-religious features of later Vedic age. The moment you look at later Vedic period, it means we are talking about the period from 1000 BC to around 600 BC, the period about which we have information from the later Vedic literature, say Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharveda, the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Their long-term impact on Indian society. So this is a 10 marker, 150 words. Identify the parts. Here there are 2 parts in this answer. Then you have to allocate words to each of these parts. It's not necessary that both parts will have to have equal number of words. It's not necessary that you have to have equal division. Division will depend, or the words will depend on the importance of these parts. So first part here is more important. First part will require more words. Second part is relatively less important, it's relatively shorter, and it will require less words. So let's say you have 150 words, you have to write intro. Introduction to your answer will consume 10 to 15% of your words. Always understand in percentage, because if it is 150 words answer or 10 marker, the number of words will be different. If it is 250 words answer, the number of words in intro would be different. So 10 to 15% of your answer length has to go to introduction, and similarly 10 to 15% has to go to conclusion. So once you leave around 20 to 30% of your answer for introduction and conclusion, so you're left with around 70 to 80% for your main body. So let's say 80% here, 80% of 15, 120 words, and out of 120 words, maybe 70, 75 will be required by the first part, and maybe around 40, 45 would be required by the second part. You have only 70, 75 words. So ensure that you do not write full language. Try to cut down number of words in each and every dimension you add here. Let me show you how to tackle this. Question is saying socio-religious features of later Vedic age. Think of the society, think of the religious life of later Vedic period. What do you find? Let's start with features of society in later Vedic time. Try to be very specific so that you can write more in same number of words. The later Vedic society was characterized by crystallization. Use standard good quality words. Crystallization of Varna system. You can write crystallization or solidification of Varna system, or you can write the fourfold Varna system was firmly established. How do we know this, or why do I say this? Because the first reference of Varna, fourfold Varna system, is found in 10th mandala of Rigveda. 10th mandala means chapter, and 10 chapters were there in Rigveda. So last chapter of Rigveda, Purusha Shukta, is the hymn in which we find the only reference of 4 Varnas in early Vedic age or in Rigveda. So we have one reference of 4 Varnas in early Vedic period, but in later Vedic period, this fourfold Varna system was firmly established. In other language, you can say crystallization of Varna system or crystallization of Varna order, or fourfold Varna system was an essential feature of later Vedic age social life. Depending on how do you write here, try to write the same thing in minimum number of words. Like I have used only 4 words. Words would be needed. When we start writing answer, almost every time you'll feel as if content is less. And when you start writing answer, you finish your answer, you'll find in most of the cases that many points are still with you. You have to bring those points back to your home. You cannot include because of scarcity of time or shortage of writing space. ensure that you make a format. Whenever you approach a question, you read a question, try to make a format. Here, till the time you are preparing with us, you can make format on a piece of paper in a corner of your test copy. And if you practice few times by writing, then slowly you'll get the ability to make format without actually writing anything. You can prepare format within your mind within less than 30 seconds. So start with writing and then start working through mental frameworks. So make a format, say, I need to write introduction about social religious life. Okay, there are going to be, let's say, 4 features of society, 4 features of religion, and then I can come back to the impact, and then I can come back to the conclusion. So you can divide, okay, I have only, say, 75 words to 35 words. In 35 words of each part, society and religion, I'll write at least 4 to 5 different dimensions. Crystallization of Varna system, then patriarchal social system was also formally established. Patriarchy was there in early Vedic age also, but now the power of father or Kulapa or the head of family had increased significantly. The new thing, specific things here, what you find is Gotra system came into existence, or later Vedic age society was characterized by Gotra system. You cannot write everything what you know. I will keep on explaining you so many things here. You can learn, but you cannot afford to write everything. Gotra indicated a common lineage. The people having a common lineage or bloodline were part of same Gotra. Gotra exogamy was followed, or Gotra identity was used at the time of marriage. Marriage was supposed to be outside Gotra. Then you have ashrama system. Ashrama system, division of life into 4 phases: brahmacharya ashrama, grihastha ashrama, you have vanprastha ashrama, and then you have sannyas ashram. Ashrama system came into existence. There are 4 ashramas. First reference of ashrama system is found in Chandogya Upanishad. Again, you cannot write all these things in GS exam, but if you know, that will be helping you here and there. So first reference of ashrama system is found in Chandogya Upanishad, where only first 3 ashramas are mentioned. In Javala Upanishad, for the first time, we find all the 4 ashramas mentioned together. Then you have the decline in the status of women. The status of women declined to some extent during later Vedic age. Birth of a daughter was not desired in early Vedic period, but in later Vedic age, the birth of a daughter was considered curse. So that we can understand how there was a significant change in social attitude towards females. The access to education to women was also relatively less. We have references of Gargi and Maitrayani in later Vedic literature, but these references are few. In early Vedic times or Vedic age, Apala, Ghosha, Lopamudra, Vishwara, all these kind of great intellectual ladies were there. So those kind of women were less. So social life features you have seen here. Now we can pick up the features of religious life. What were the specific dimensions here? In religious life, you can think of the enlargement of rituals and ceremonies. The rituals and ceremonies became elaborate. What kind of rituals are Sumedha sacrifice, Vajapaya sacrifice, Rajasuya sacrifice? These kind of elaborate rituals and ceremonies came into existence. These kind of ceremonies were absent in early Vedic age. Some of these ceremonies used to continue for days and months together. So elaborate rituals and ceremonies, or rituals and ceremonies became elaborate. Then role of priests or role of priestly class increased. In early Vedic age, there were 17 different kinds of priests. Householder or the father was considered as the priest of 17th category. 16 different specific professional categories of priests are mentioned in Rig Vedic Samhita. Samhita means the first book of every Veda, the original creation or the original composition. So Rig Vedic Samhita contains list of 16 different professional priestly classes. Householder was considered a priest of 17th category, but in later Vedic time, the role of priest was almost indispensable in rituals and ceremonies. Hardly any ritual or ceremony could be performed without the involvement of priest. So that's very important here. Then you see here, the status of deities changed. The deities of early Vedic times, say Indra, Agni, and Varuna, they lost their status. Prajapati, Brahm, you have other deities coming up in this period. So Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, or Brahma, Rudra, and Vishnu became the prominent deities in later Vedic times. So change in the status of deities. The most important part that happened here was the philosophical dimensions of religion came into existence. In early Vedic times, the idea of heaven, hell were not there. The concept of soul, transmigration, soul, all these things were absent. In later Vedic times, the philosophical dimensions of religion were very well developed. Upanishads talk about the philosophical issues. Salvation, how to achieve salvation. Initially, the Brahmana literature, Brahmana is the second part of every Veda. First part of every Veda is Samhita. Second part is Brahmana. Brahmana contains the explanation of hymns of Samhita. Then third part is always Aranyaka, and then Upanishad is the fourth part. Every Veda has 4 parts. So in Upanishads, we have philosophical discussions. Upa means sitting, Nishad means near the teacher. The teacher and disciple used to sit. The disciple used to ask teacher some deeply philosophical questions. The teacher used to explain in detail with examples to tackle those challenges. So that we can understand how religious life evolved during later Vedic age. These were the essential features. What is the significance? What's the long-term impact? Now, this social and religious development of later Vedic time prepared a foundation for Indian culture. These are the bedrocks of Indian civilization. The institutions which developed here, say family, marriage, Varna system, Gotra Ashrama, this continued in future even till today. So Vedic period gave the foundational floor to Indian society and culture, or Vedic religion, Vedic society prepared the bedrock of Indian civilization. That's very important. The intellectual depth of Indian culture was enriched or was increased significantly by philosophical speculation or philosophical ideas that we have to see. The integration of environmental issues or environment and religion was developed here, because most of the deities in Vedic times were natural forces. Personification of forces of nature was an essential feature of Vedic religion. So like today, we have problem of water quality, we have problem of air quality. Marut was the god of wind. So Marut was worshipped because they understood, the Vedic people understood the significance of wind in their life. Water was worshipped, rivers were hailed as mothers. Today, most of our rivers are polluted and government is fighting hard to clean these rivers. So you have to keep those things in mind. So environmental dimensions of Indian religion and philosophy evolved here and have continued till today, so that we can comprehend the different dimensions of impact. The different dimensions of impact can be comprehended by having a look at the continuity of ideas from Vedic age in Indian history or Indian society and culture during later parts of ancient, medieval, modern, and up to present times. So this is how you can approach the question. Do not rush through. Try to understand, identify the key demands, find out the parts, allocate words so that you do not kind of overemphasize on one particular part and underemphasize on some other particular part of answer. Every part is important. What matters here are the marks. You are here to get marks, and if you ensure that you write best possible answer, you can always increase your marks by 15-20%. Same knowledge, better presentation, better analysis will increase your marks by 15-20%, and that's the difference between a winner, somebody who gets rank in top 50 or top 100, and somebody who could not find his place in final merit list. Let's go to the second question here. The second question is about analyze the features of Indian civilization that ensured its continuity compared to the other ancient civilization. Think of Mesopotamian civilization, think of Egyptian civilization. Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian civilization, these were little older and contemporary to Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization declined, but many of the elements of Harappan civilization or Harappan culture, the term often quoted by scholars is that Harappan civilization declined, but Harappan culture continued to survive in different forms during later periods. So in India, the essential features of Indian civilization go back to very, very old times. Think of the practices of using, say, vermilion, sindoor in wedding rituals. Think of the worship of phallus, shivling. These are proto-Australoid practices, or these are the practices which were much, much older than even the Vedic age. Harappan people used to have phallus worship. They used to worship Mother Goddess. Think of today, Sakti, Durga, Ambe, Kali, different forms of Mother Goddess we worship even today, so that we can understand continuity what we're talking about. Think of agricultural knowledge. Harappans used to have advanced knowledge of agriculture, and we are practicing even today. Think of the use of rice. In any kind of sacred ritual or ritual ceremony, rice is used. Rice is used to put tikka. Rice is used in offerings. So why rice? Because rice was the first grain produced by God Brahm, or rice the first grain in the basket of God Brahm. Rice was the first food grain cultivated, and India was the first country to produce rice. Mirzapur, Allahabad region, Oldi Hawa is the place where we got archaeological evidence of earliest cultivation of rice. So you can understand those things. India was the earliest producer of cotton. Cotton was termed as Sindhon in Mesopotamian civilization because they used to import cotton from India or Indus region. So when you think of Indian civilization, you have to have those points at the back of your mind. Then you can appreciate, then only you can understand how great our culture, our civilization is. So what features of Indian civilization have ensured its continuity? Indian civilization has been inclusive in character. So inclusiveness of Indian civilization, many groups came to India. Think who was in India in the beginning. We all, or the human race, originated in Africa. Somebody may say, okay, you are Bangladeshis, or you are Pakistanis, you are Chinese, you are this, or you are that. Think for a time, think for a moment, we all are Africans. We all human beings originated in Africa. The Indian population originated in Ethiopia. The European population originated in Morocco. From Morocco, they moved to Spain, and they moved to other parts of Europe. And this side, Indian side, you can think of Ethiopia, just by the side of Red Sea. From Ethiopia, the early man, the Negrito or the Negroes, they somehow reached India. Negritos were followed by Proto-Australoids, then came Mongoloids, then came Dravidians or Mediterranean people, and last was Aryan. Earlier it was believed that Aryans came from outside, but recent researches have revealed that Aryans were original inhabitants of India. And from India, the Aryans moved in different parts of the world. There were 12 different branches of Aryan civilization. The original branch was in India, somewhere around Sanoli. Sanoli excavations have confirmed this fact just a few years back. You might have heard about Sanoli. Sanoli is one of the most important archaeological sites in Bagpat district of western parts of UP. So excavations at Sanoli have confirmed that Aryans were originally here. The linguistic researches carried out by experts from all over the world have identified that Sanskrit language was closest to the original or the Proto-Indo-European language used by the ancestors of Aryans, and they were Indians. So from India, they moved to China. There was a province called Tokharian culture used to be there. Hittite or Mitanni, then Russia, the Latin, the Greek, all these kind of civilizations were created by the branches of Aryans who moved out of India. This is not an ideological kind of understanding. This has been confirmed by historical researches. So this is not a propaganda of party A or party B. This has been confirmed by linguistic analysis and archaeological findings. So inclusiveness, many groups came to India. They came to India and slowly they became Indian. Think of Sakas, Kushanas, Hunas. Arabs came, Turks came. Once they came to India, they were Indianized. That was because of inclusiveness of Indian culture. Second thing, you have to see the liberal and flexible character. Indian culture has been very, very liberal and flexible. New features, new institutions have come up with the passage of time. And these new institutions have ensured that challenges of new age could be countered by Indian people. those who are rigid, the institutions or the people, those who are rigid, they die out first. Think of a flexible tree standing on the beach of sea or beach of a river, coast of a river, and think of a rigid tree which will fall if winds are intense. The rigid one will collapse and the flexible will bend and will rise up again. So flexibility. Then you have to see the institutional strength. Indian institutions have been very, very solid. Even today, look at the European culture. They don't have a well-developed system of family. In India, the family institution, the institution of marriage, these are very, very solid. At times, you can see in the same family people from multiple generations living together. In European culture, the moment boy or the girl or the daughter or son just reaches 10th standard, they almost become different. They almost lose the entire connection with their family. Hardly any parent in Europe finances the college education of their kids. In India, we try to even ensure the education of our grandkids and great-grandkids, and we try to build the palaces and castles for our next few generations because we are heavily invested in the institution of family. We have a strong institution, that's why our foundations have been strong, and normal challenges faced during the period of time could not really disturb us. Then you have to see the value system. Indian value system has been extremely solid. Our ethical foundations have been extremely solid. Values means something for which you stand. You might have read in paper for ethics, integrity, aptitude, you'll come across the value. Value means something you stand for, what identifies you, something that you hold most important. Think of truthfulness, think of hard work, think of courage, think of integrity. So these kind of values have been an integral part of Indian civilization since ages. Then you have to see the scientific inventions, mathematics, chemistry, astronomy, all these different branches of science developed in India more than any other part of the world. And the society which has innovative behavior, the society which is invested in innovation and research is going to survive for long. Then you have to understand about the resource availability. The societies where resources are less, they die out, but India is blessed with extensive, the plains of North India, plains of Indus, Brahmaputra, that's the northern plain. Then you have the plains, fertile plains in south in the valley of river Kaveri. You have mines, you have industries. In ancient times also, India was making the best quality steel in the world that was known as wood. And this wood steel was exported to different parts of the world. So we had advanced knowledge of science and tech. Science and tech ensured that we could innovate and we had resources, we could finance our different aspects of life. Then you can understand about the geographical aspects. Geographical features have also ensured in the survival and continuity. Himalayas protect us from northern side. Hardly any invasion has been across Himalayas. 1962 Indo-China War, or that Chinese invasion, was the first evidence or first example of invasion faced by India in the entire history across Himalayas. We have passes which allow trade. You have Suleiman Pass or Khyber Pass in northwestern parts of Himalayas. So these passes allow movement of people in small groups, but large armies have always found it difficult to cross them. So geography has also ensured the survival and continuity of Indian civilization. So when you have to analyze such a beautiful question, you have to tackle such a beautiful challenge, divide that into different parts, maybe some cultural elements, maybe some institutional, maybe some social strengths, maybe some religious strengths, maybe some political administrative, and then you can come down to geographical aspects. So this is how you have to understand this answer. Look at question number 3. Discuss the contribution of foreign travelers. So what kind of foreign travelers can you recall? Chinese, Arab, European. So depending on the question here, because Greco-Roman travelers also came to India, think of Megasthenes. Megasthenes came to India during the times of Chandragupta Maurya. But your question is about Chinese, Arabs, and Europeans. So understand the demand. Do not write anything and everything that you have in your mind. Chinese means you have to see Fahian or Faxian, Chinese Wenchang or Jianzhuang, Think of Arabs. Al-Suleiman came in 9th century. Al-Misri, like in south you have Thiruvalluvar, Tirupura also. Thiru means Shri. Same way Al means Sri here. Al-Masudi and Al-Biruni. So these were the prominent Arab travelers. Al-Biruni was the most significant. He wrote Kitabul Hind or Tehqiq-e-Hind, the mirror of India. He came along with Mahmud Ghaznavi. Europeans, you can say Nunes. You can say Duarte Barbosa. You can say Travania, you can say Bernia. There are many foreign travelers or European travelers who came to India starting in around 12th, 13th centuries. Now, all of these travelers left behind detailed references about India. All of them were impressed by Indian society, Indian values and culture. You have to pick a few points to understand society. Like Fayan came in, say, 399. He was here till around 412 AD when Chandragupta II Vikramaditya was the king of Gupta Empire. Fayan wrote about the declining status of Buddhism. Fayan wrote about the popularity of Shaivism, popularity of Vaishnavism. Fayan wrote that Indians were of high character. Indians did not consume garlic. Indians did not consume onion. Practice of usury or money lending was absent. Queen Shang was in the times of Harshvardhan, 629-645 AD. He came to India in 629. He stayed here for 16 years. He received education at Nalanda University. He wrote about Nalanda University that there were 2,000 teachers and 10,000 students. He wrote about Indian society. He wrote that the social status of Vaishyas had declined. So the status of Shudra means the last or the fourth Varna in hierarchy, had improved because Shudras were agriculturists. This was the time of decline of secondary tertiary economic activities. And because of that, agriculture was gaining importance. Al-Suleiman al-Masudi wrote about the kingdoms of Deccan, Gurjara Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, Chalukyas. They wrote in detail because they came by the route of sea route and they landed in Deccan. Al-Biruni wrote about Indian society, Indian knowledge, Indian economy. He said Indians were having very advanced knowledge of science, mathematics, but he condemned Indians for their conservative outlook. He condemned Indians for the lack of historiography or understanding of history. He said that whenever anything about past is asked from Indians, they start telling stories. So whenever somebody asks you something, avoid stories, otherwise somebody will condemn you, criticize you the way Al-Biruni criticized India. Then you have Nunes. He talked about practice of sati. He visited Vijayanagar Empire. Duarte Barbosa also visited Vijayanagar Empire. Nicola Conti came from Italy. So specific references, maybe 2-3 points from Chinese, maybe 2-3 points from Arab travelers, maybe 2-3 points from European travelers. You have to write something about society. Society means what was their view about family. They wrote about sati. They wrote about, say, polygamy. They wrote about the resourcefulness of Indians. They wrote about the Indian strength of character, Indian habits. So those things you have to put here to meet the demands of this answer. Look at question number 4. Evaluate the role of post-independence reforms in shaping India's socio-economic development trajectory. Can you think of the most important reforming initiative taken by Government of India after independence? The most important initiative was the drafting of Constitution. The American scholar Granville Austin said that Indian Constitution was the most important document. It was a keystone for social, economic, and cultural transformation of India. The Constitution started the process of reforms. Constitution guaranteed the right to equality. Think of fundamental rights. Number of freedoms were granted to every citizen, irrespective of caste, class, race. Think of Article 17, how untouchability was declared illegal or untouchability was prohibited. So Constitution starts with this. Then you can think of adoption of planned economic development or planning commission. You have National Development Council. Planning Commission was set up in 1950. NDC, National Development Council, was set up in 1952. Think of education side, UGC was created in 1953. UGC was granted statutory or legal status in 1956. Think of reforms related to banking. Think of reforms related to land ownership. You have land reforms. Then you have Green Revolution. So all these reforms of economic and social character, think of integration of Indian states, think of reorganization of states on the basis of language. In 1953, there was a serious demand or serious agitation led by Potti Sri Ramulu for the creation of Andhra for Telugu-speaking people of South. So all these reforms you have to see, and all these reforms paved the way for the evolution of India as a liberal democratic nation, as a developed nation. In 1947, when India gained independence, the poverty rate was more than 50%, or the more than 50% of Indian population was below poverty line. Think of today, it's less than 5%. Think of literacy. Around 10% of Indians were literate in 1947. Today, literacy rate is north of 80%. So all these things you have to use to corroborate your arguments. If you do not put data, if you do not put specific references, your answer will not have weight. You have to have data. You have to have specific references to put along with your interpretation or along with your statements. Now let's look at the question number 5. The question number 5 discuss the challenges of nation building in India after independence with a special reference to integration and diversity. So can you think of challenges which were faced by India after 47? The first challenge was posed by partition, creation of Pakistan. More than 80 million Indians became homeless, became refugees in their own country. Lakhs of lives were lost. You might have read about communal riots in Noakhali in West Bengal or Bengal that time. You can think of millions of migrants coming from Punjab, West Punjab, trains overloaded by people and trains being looted and burnt on the way. So 1947, 46, 47, partition, you have to see, was the first major challenge. Industries were dislocated. Think of Bangladesh today, East Pakistan, West Pakistan, these are two portions. East Pakistan was having a lot of textile and jute factories. India was producing jute. India was producing cotton. Factories were in West Bengal. You know, these kind of factories or industries are influenced by geoclimatic conditions. You need a humid climate for cloth making, for textile industry. So partition was the first major challenge. Then think of food shortage. India was living on foreign food aid. American PL 480 program. PL means Public Law 480, American Food for Peace program. These instruments were used by American government to influence Indian foreign policy. India was living ship to mouth. This was the common phrase used in 1960s, ship to mouth. Indian leaders, particularly Indira Gandhi, when she visited US, she was insulted in early 1970s when she became Prime Minister in 1971. So food shortage was another issue. Resource scarcity. Resources were very, very limited. We have to get help of Soviet Union, USSR, and Britain and West Germany in establishing multi-purpose projects, in establishing steel factories like Rourkela, Durgapur, Bhilai, and Bokaro, etc. So all these challenges you have to understand. Now, a special focus here is on diversity and unity. So you need to look at the demand of linguistic reorganization. There was a demand that a state should be created on the basis of linguistic identity. Linguistic identity was one of the key demands. Then you have demands related to official language, or issue related to official language. Article 343, Clause 1 of Indian Constitution provided for keeping Hindi as the only official language. but this was opposed by many leaders from non-Hindi speaking areas. Have you ever thought what will happen if, so say today, Malayalam becomes the only official language or Bengali becomes the only official language? For you particularly, for civil service aspirant, this is a very important question, because official language has to be the language of the examination. So that time Hindi was declared as the only official language, or the members of Constituent Assembly wanted to have Hindi as the only official language, but many leaders from non-Hindi speaking areas were not comfortable. They wanted to have English as the second official language for 15 years, and Article 343 clause 2 provided it. When 1965 started approaching, agitation demonstrations were witnessed in South India, in North India in favor of Hindi language, in South India against Hindi language, or for the continuation of English as the second language. So all these challenges, then you have issues related to cultural policies, family planning. India was the first nation in the world to have family planning. Then look at the issues related to cultural diversities. Different groups wanted recognition of their different languages. How many languages should be part of our 8th schedule? So these languages have increased over the period of time. Every group in India was concerned about their identity, about their culture. Everyone was apprehensive that in this Indian Union, where more than 500 states were amalgamated within a very short period of time, their culture, their identity, their language would be lost. Those apprehensions created challenges for the process of nation building. So understand these and identify these specific challenges in your answer part by part. Question number 6. Analyze the urban features of Harappan civilization and their modern relevance. Urban features. Think of Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization was an urban civilization. More than 1,400 urban settlements of Harappan civilization have been discovered so far during excavations and explorations. Every settlement was having certain common features. For example, planned layout. You might have heard about the pattern of planning. Planned layout grid pattern of planning was followed by Harappan people. Then you have drainage system. There was a well-developed system of underground drainage. Then you have about division of cities into two parts, upper town, lower town. The upper town was always to the west of the lower town. So this was lower town and this was upper town. Upper town was on a raised platform or on a high ground. Important people, important establishments were in upper town. Common people were in lower town. Think today when people go to their offices every morning, many travel from one part of the city to another part of the city, and more than a quarter of their daily time get lost in traveling at occasions. So if we have offices and residential places nearby, then travel time could be minimized, and that can significantly improve the productivity. That can give boost to Indian economy. Harappans were conscious of that. They were having common people on one side, they were having VIPs, important establishment on the other side, so that they do not have to move from one side to other side daily. So that's very important modern relevance. Drainage system. In city like Delhi, the drains start overflowing when clouds come in the sky. Much before the starting of the rainy season, we have always the problem of overflowing drainage, the flooding of roads. So division. Then you have about the literate character. Harappan cities were literate. They used, or people used, pictographic script. The script has been found on ports and seals of common use, which indicate that common people, those who are making those ports and seals, those who are using those ports and seals, knew how to read and write. So population density, you can see the population density was quite high, because 30 to 40,000 people were living in cities like Harappan civilization within less than few square kilometer area. So you can understand how dense the cities were. Uniformity in terms of weight, a standard of measurement. Harappan civilization, Harappan urban centers were multi-ethnic, different racial groups were living together. Harappan urban centers were liberal and progressive because they were using different kind of ornaments. They were having features adopted from foreign civilizations. So all those things you need to put in your answer. Look at the social life, look at religious life, look at administrative life, look at economic life, and you'll find many essential features of Harappan urban centers. The Harappan urban centers were characterized by predominance of secondary tertiary activities. The Harappan people or the residents of Harappan urban centers were peace-loving. They were multicultural, they were multi-class, they were multi-ethnic. So these dimensions you have to put. Look at the city and see what kind of features can be identified. Modern relevance, division of city, number 1. Number 2, the graveyards, the cremation grounds of Harappan people were away from residential areas. In cities like Delhi, you have cremation grounds in the heart of city, and there are dozens of cremation grounds in Delhi where lakhs of people are living in close proximity. Harappans used to have the graveyards away from habitation areas. It means Harappan people were concerned about health and sanitation. Harappans were first in the world to use flush toilets. So they were paying attention to hygiene. Harappans were paying attention to recharging of groundwater table or water harvesting. It means Harappan urban centers were sustainable in character. That sustainability is a major challenge being faced by Indian urban centers at present. So pick up the points, link with today, and see what kind of problems can be tackled by adopting these features from Harappan towns and cities. Question number 7, discuss the challenges and outcomes of linguistic reorganization. Linguistic reorganization was carried out through 7th Constitution Amendment Act in 1956. Reorganization of states on the basis of recommendations of Justice Fazl Ali Commission. 14 states and 6 UTs were created by Government of India. What challenges have been posed by linguistic reorganization? The first major challenge is that resource distribution is not equitable. Some states have more natural resources, some have less resources. So because of focus on linguistic reorganization, we could not carry out equitable distribution of resources, balanced regional development. These kind of terms you have to use in your answers. Equitable distribution of resources, balanced regional development could not be ensured. Indian Federation has got distorted because size of Indian states is not similar, is not equal. Look at America. In American Senate, every state has 2 members. In our Rajya Sabha, the representation of the state is not uniform because the size is different. So Indian Federation has got distorted. Then you have to look at the unending demands of similar reorganization from different parts of the country. In UP, demand is coming from multiple different parts. At least 4 different groups are demanding creation of 4 different sub-units in today's UP. Similarly, in Maharashtra, there is a demand for creation of smaller states. So this system of linguistic reorganization was a slippery slope. It created new challenges for future. Then you have to understand that the desire of national integration, the makers of Indian Constitution, the leaders of independent India, they knew that India has to develop one common national identity, but regionalism became a dominant phenomena because of linguistic reorganization. The process of national integration got significantly obstructed. Then you have to look at the internal security issues. Look at Northeast. There are so many different tribal groups. They are fighting with each other. It's very, very difficult to maintain law and order in northeastern states because of conflicting demands of different groups. So outcome, if you have to see outcome, we could have administrative convenience because one language was understood by majority of the people in that state. Outcome, the faith of people in democracy was strengthened because the demand of people was accepted by Government of India by creating states on the basis of language. Then you can understand the diversity, the unity, the idea of India has remained alive because Indian diversity could survive along with Indian unity, so balance somehow could be struck. So that we have to understand the outcome, how agitation demonstrations which were going on in different parts of India at that time in 1953. Poet Sri Ramalu died on 56th day of his fast, and India was on edge. Many critics of India were thinking that Indian unity would not last even for months. That time, Government of India took the decision to appoint Fazal Ali Commission. So that was a major achievement. Look at question number 8. The First World War was not merely a result of immediate trigger, but a culmination of deep-rooted structural factors. This is a statement. Analyze the causes of the war and examine its global consequences. So first part is a statement. First part is not a question. That is just setting up the context. The second part is the question, analyze the causes. So you have to analyze the causes of First World War, of course, in the light of the first statement. Rapid nationalism or extremely radical form of nationalism was responsible. Imperialist colonial rivalries were responsible. Economic rivalries, Germany was becoming a major industrial power and Britain was feeling the pressure. That was important. Then you have arms race. Then you have division of Europe into two armed camps. On one side was Triple Entente, on the other side was Triple Alliance. So these divisions were important. The negative consequences of foreign policy of Bismarck. Foreign policy of Bismarck. Bismarck was the Chancellor of Germany. Bismarck carried out unification of Germany almost single-handedly during 1860s. Foreign policy of Bismarck was based on the system of peacetime military alliances. So he created a number of secret alliances. Alliances were aimed at each other. They were completely unsustainable, mutually opposing in character. So these alliances, this foreign policy vitiated or poisoned the environment in Europe. Nobody was trusting. So environment of distrust was very important. Then trigger was the murder of Austrian Prince French Ferdinand, his wife Sofia, in the streets of Bosnian city of Sarajevo, when he was murdered along with his wife in broad daylight by Gavrilo Princip. Austrian-Hungarian Empire was severely threatened. Austria-Hungary was one unit. The term is Austrian-Hungarian Empire. When the existence of Austrian-Hungarian Empire came under threat, they had to respond. And once they put pressure on Serbia, Russia was supporting Serbia because Russian involvement was very active because of Russian foreign policy. So conflicting foreign policy objectives, all those pushed the world into this great war. British Prime Minister was Lord Oxford at the time of beginning of the war. He said Europe sleepwalked into this great devastating conflict. Examine long-term consequences, political impact. Four great empires collapsed. Revolution, Russian Revolution, Turkish Revolution were triggered. 7 new nations came up. With 7 nations, you have Poland, you have Hungary, you have Czechoslovakia, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. All these nations came up. So 7 new nations came up because of this war. Then you have death of more than 8.5 million people. More than 21 million people were wounded. Many millions could not be traced. A sense of disillusionment developed in Europe. People lost faith in the notion of life and happiness. The cost of war was more than 400 billion US dollars. So entire economy was devastated. The direction of world trade was changed fundamentally by direct and indirect effects of this war. So look at these dimensions, which are social, cultural, political in character. Look at the next question here, question number 9. The later Vedic period marked a transition from tribal to territorial polity. Tribal, in early Vedic times, the society, the polity, the systems were tribal. Our focus here is on political life. So polity was tribal. Aryans were living in small tribal groups. Tribal chief was managing day-to-day affairs. He was assisted by members of Sabha and Samiti, the representatives of people. In early Vedic times, there was no concept of a state. The first reference of a state is found in Attriya Brahmana. So no state was there. It means people were moving from one place to other place. They were not having a definite territorial identity. Without definite territorial identity, there can be no concept of a state. In later Vedic times, concept of a state came up. The people started living sedentary life because of agriculture. And Janapadas. In early Vedic time, the state was Jana, or the political unit, not a state. The highest political unit was Jana. In later Vedic times, the highest political unit was Janapada. Policy of territorial expansion was followed. Wars and battles, started being fought for territorial expansion. In early Vedic times, the main cause of military conflicts was cattle theft, or wars were fought for cattle lifting. In later Vedic times, the wars were fought for territorial expansion. Aswamedha, the sacrifice or the ceremony performed for expansion of territories, came up in later Vedic times. So all these dimensions you have to understand. Write about institution, write about monarchy, concept of Rajya sacrifice, all these things came up. Titles started being adopted by kings in later Vedic times. Titles were dependent on the direction. The titles like Virat, Raja Bhoja, Samrat, Swarat, all these were adopted by kings for different direction. Virat was title of northern kings. Raja, Bhoja, Samrat and Swarat. These were the directions, suppose sometimes in pre or in mains also you can use them. The more the facts, the more the data, the more the specific details you put in your answer, the better are going to be your marks. Ensure there's weight, ensure there is a specific detail in your answer instead of writing general things. Now let's look at the last question here. Economic critique of colonial rule formed the backbone of Indian nationalism. Economic critique means works of Dadabhai Nauroji, R.C. Dutt, M.G. Ranade. Dadabhai Nauroji was first Indian intellectual, first nationalist to put forward drain theory. So he wrote a book, The Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, in 1873. In that he analyzed the colonial exploitative character of British rule, how Indian resources were being drained out to Britain in a very systematic manner. So Dadabhai Nauroji, you have to see R.C. Dutt wrote his book, Economic History of India, that was in 3 volumes. So he analyzed the different aspects of economic policies, the drain theory, the linking of colonial rule to destruction of industries, the linking of colonial rule to Indian poverty, hunger and recurring famine, intensified discontent against British rule, and this economic critique triggered the intense wave of nationalism that was represented by Congress and other political organizations during 1880s and thereafter. So this is how you have to understand how economic critique prepared the ground for Indian freedom struggle or the commencement of Indian national movement. I hope this today's discussion was beneficial to you. I hope you have noted down the points which I have highlighted in this discussion. Still, if you have any problem, any issue, always feel free to contact me through the office mail, through the website, teacher support, and I'll be always happy to help you whenever you face difficulty. Take care of yourself, keep working hard. God bless you.